All right, let's do this. Um, Welcome to chapter 3. This is week 4. I think this one's going to be a bit of a tough week for all of us. It's been for me so far. Something that you'll find working in any tech um, industry area, whatever you're doing, you're going to find that everything changes constantly. And something you did a month ago, 2 months ago, a year ago doesn't work anymore because of security patches, upgrades, updates, and all that good stuff. So this week, we're going to talk a little bit about that. Your book's going to go through over some basic stuff that's fairly easy. Make sure you do the self-test exercises in the book. Put those in a Word document, send them to me. Do the quiz, and we're going to go over the programming exercise. We're going to do something a little bit different than in the book. If you will take a look at these, this is what we're going to be creating. This is going to be your exercise. And here I've got two versions. They're coded the same way. But back in my day, as my son loves to say because he thinks I'm old, you could just have your folder structure like I kind of explained to you before, your CSS, your JavaScript. You could open the open your HTML file in your browser and do all of your testing that way. Last year, they updated, all browsers updated to a security vulnerability so that you cannot do that anymore. Last year I found a workaround that was simple. This year it's not working anymore. So we're going to have to kind of skip ahead to chapter 8, create our own local server to be able to run our apps from here on out. And we will go over that a little bit. If you'll notice in this browser bar here, it says file : / and so it's reading everything straight from a file. Now I've got two links up here in a nav bar. One's the information page that we're looking at, and you should be able to click on this and go over. But you see that little, every time I click on it, I get this little error loading page right here. And if you go to your inspect and go to the console, you can see the error that you're getting. It's a cross-origin request. They don't let you do that anymore. If you want to learn more, you click on that and it'll tell you all about the CORS requests are not HTTP, so they don't let you do that anymore. If you want a little more insight as to why they don't work. So it makes it very difficult to, make an app that doesn't work, or you can't test without a server. If you look over on the right-hand side, you can see that it's the same web page, but I'm reading it from an IP address. What I've done is created a local service, a local server that passes all the traffic between it, so it doesn't look like it's a file on the computer. And we're going to set that up. And now if I click over here to the interface, it will actually go over. And this is what we're going to create. We're going to have a slider, and it's going to do a calculation when we hit this button here every time. And the calculation will be correct. So that's what we're going to do this week. So the first thing I need you to do is go to nodejs.org. And I think, just click this link, take you to that website. You're going to download this 16.17.0 LTS, recommended for most users. Download that. When it is downloaded, you'll have this MSI file. Just double click it from here, click OK, because you got to install it. You get a security warning probably, run it. You'll get this setup wizard. I've already installed it, so it's going to look different. Just keep the defaults, or it will let you tell it where you want to install it. I install all my programs onto a separate drive. As you go through, there will be a little checkbox that wants to know if you want to install some extra software. I think it's called Chocolatey. I don't know. I don't think we need that. So if you don't want to select that, that's fine. If you do select it, it will go through everything else for the installation. And when a node is done installing, it will then open a PowerShell window and upgrade Chocolatey. It'll upgrade your Visual Studio Python stuff. It'll do a bunch of things so that everything works together. Go through this whole long rigmarole until it finally finishes, and then you can exit. Yeah. So once you have Node installed, we'll come back to it. I have saved you several steps in that I gave you this chapter 3 starting folder structure. If you download this, and it'll just download, and you open it up, I don't know, there, you open it up, just take this folder, throw it on your desktop or wherever you want to work with it. I chose the desktop because you'll have to do a little command line stuff later, and it just makes the path easier. But once you have that on your desktop, we'll start working. You'll see that in here we have some packages. This is for Node modules, and your server.js file. Just leave those alone for now. Like I said, we cover this in chapter 8 because it's important to know the difference between client side and server side, what code is executed where, what is performed on the client machine, what is performed on the server. That's a lot of the things that they'll talk about in the book this week. And then we don't actually show you how to do any of that until week 8. But because of the way things change, we're going to touch on it at least this week. So if you want to go to chapter 8 and take a look at the video that they have, he explains how he uses Node and sets it all up for the little project that he's doing that week. But right now, it should, cross my fingers because I'm all along for the ride too. We're going to see how well it works now. These folders, I got your JS folder. This already has your jQuery in there. I went ahead and downloaded all that for you. Your CSS folder also has your jQuery mobile CSS files in there. These are not the latest versions. These are the versions I used last year and they worked. This year's versions were not doing this. I was not getting the same results. So I was probably doing something wrong, but I know that this works and this is what we're going to do. Same principles apply, from version to version. But again, things change. And if you don't keep track of what those changes are, it's just not going to work for you. So, let's go to the programming exercise. I guess it shows you in the book. Let me just double check, make sure I'm telling you right. 7.3. I'm sorry. I hate dead air, dead space. You don't want to spend extra time just watching me search through stuff, and I try really hard to make sure that I give you everything you need. Yeah, the programming exercise. It's the whole thing. We're just going to do the whole thing all at once. You don't have to worry about these different steps. I just want one finished working fluid conversion. So the first page in that fluid conversion converter, if we go to Visual Studio and we're going to open a local folder and we're going to navigate to that desktop fluid converter folder that I gave you. And again, you can see you got your jQuery already in there, your jQuery mobile CSS file, your jQuery mobile JavaScript file, and then your regular jQuery JavaScript file. Generally, you need all three of these. And again, these are for Node.js in just a little bit. So the first thing we need to do is create the first page of that. And we're going to add a new file, and we'll call it, or I'll call it, you can call it whatever you want. Chapter 3 info.html. And let me... Goodness gracious. Leave that there. All right, so the first thing we need to do information, like the last step on this, the information page, we're going to do that first. And in Visual Studio, we've got this chapter 3 info. I'm going to start working on that. So remember doc type to start out with, like we went over last week. If this is just the second time you've ever done HTML, it's going to probably feel like you're drinking from a fire hose, but we've got to get through it because it's going to get a little deeper as we go. Be sure we start our HTML, start and end those tags, and give yourself some space. Then have your head, give yourself a little space, put a title in here. I'll call it fluid for UID calc. Yeah, calc. You can call it whatever you want for the title, it's fine. So at the top in the head, remember we have to add our CSS. And I like to put comments in here just so I know where everything goes. You'll find that commenting is a big help later on. So link rel style. I didn't put an equal sign. See, equals, and then it'll do it for me. And href, and we'll do CSS. So you got to remember this. First, I designate the folder that it's in because this has to go from the page that we're on. It has to look up one directory. No, it has to look down one directory in the CSS folder to find the file that we're looking for. And this one's going to be the jQuery.mobile-1.3.1.min CSS. So this will be your style sheet. And if you decide to create your own style sheet, you can call it like chapter 3 style sheet, you would also link that here. We may or may not do that. We'll see. Then we want our JavaScripts. I'm kind of OCD about my spacing. I don't know why. Sorry. And then for scripts, it's a little different. We didn't cover this. We didn't cover this last week. This week we're going to be covering a lot more JavaScript, actually the programming aspects of web development. So you do script, and then source src equals, and that's where you totally lost my train of thought. Remember, that's where you designate the JS, the folder, and then the file name. And we've got to make sure all your script tags, if you ever write a script tag, make sure you close it out. Like we don't have to with the links, but you do with the scripts. I'm just going to copy this, paste that in there, and then change it to jQuery 1.8.3. All right, what else? I didn't talk about this last week either, but there are some meta tags that we like to use, especially with mobile development. Remember, I was talking about the sizes change so often. It's good when you're doing a mobile app, or you intend to be viewed on a mobile device at all. That you set the scale and the char set characters, whatever you want to call it. So a meta tag, and this is another place that you do a lot of SEO stuff, putting in keywords and that kind of thing, so that the web engines will crawl and find it better. So we're going to say that the viewport of the device that we're looking at, we just want it to default to a 1-to-1 scale. So it'll grow and shrink based on, you know, the actual device that it's looking at. Initial scale. And the char set. How it's interpreted. It's generally always the same, UTF-8, but we're just going to designate that and make sure it knows. And that is all for the head. We have our body. Give yourself a little room. Close these up. All right, so when you are, we talked a lot about tags, and like you said, like you can see in here, we got the HTML head, body, those are tags. When you start using jQuery, in fact, if you want to look at the jQuery files themselves, they don't, can I word wrap? Can I word wrap? I don't know how to word wrap this. Let's see. Let's see if I can open these. Open with. Not in here. If you go to your folder, go to your CSS and open up your jQuery with Notepad. Well, it still looks like garbage. Nothing's highlighted. Again, Notepad++ is better. But this is where it kind of, like, remember I said a period designates a class, right? So the class is UI-overlay-A. They got a billion classes in here, and I don't know what methodology they decided to use to name them, but this is your JavaScript, and everything in here has got these weird classes. So we have to use those classes if we want it to style our project correctly. There's only a few you're going to need to learn, and we're going to cover them anyway, so don't stress about it. But the first one is the page, and they're called data roles. So you got a div, and you're going to give it a data role, and it's going to be a page. Easy enough. Open and close. Give yourself a little space. The next thing we want across the top is a nav bar, and that's what it was just 2 buttons. There, you know, took up half the width of the page. So we're going to make a nav bar, and that's another div and another data role and nav bar. Oops. Nav bar. So navbar is an unordered list. It's treated as an unordered list, and we put anchors and links in there. We're going to do it two different ways right now. First, we're going to do an unordered list, just like we did last week. And then our first list item is going to have an anchor. An anchor is a link. You know, when you click on it, it does something or takes you to another web page. That's an anchor. And it's just that starts with an A. But here we're going to have it do on click. And this is actually a function that we will write in our JavaScript file when we start writing JavaScript. We're going to give it a class of UI dash button active UI. This is actually getting two classes. Persist is given two classes. Yep. And that is the anchor so far. And on the anchor, we want it to say information. We did not cover links and anchors last week in the quick HTML review. A basic anchor tag, you know, if you just want to, if you got some words and you want those words, you want to be able to click on those words and it take you to another web page. That's the same thing we're doing here. You do an anchor, oops, no, just a anchor, and then you do href equals, and you'd put your whatever document. Say we want to go to second page.html, and we close that on that side, and then we put the some words in the middle of that anchor. So this way the some words would be a hyperlink. And you click on that and it would take you to, and I'm sure you've seen that a billion times on websites. You know, you click on something. This is what the code looks like underneath. So we're kind of doing the same thing here, except this anchor is going to fire off a function when we write it. We haven't got there yet. So let's see, I said info. So this is going to be a link on the page to the page. Doesn't really make any sense. So we could do, if we didn't want to take it, we only got 2 buttons. So when you make a menu, let's say you have 5 pages. You make a menu, you could do a 4-button menu because you don't link to the page that you're on. I have always still done 5 and just kind of made a link to the page that I'm on as part of the menu. I don't know if that's good practice or not, but that's the way I've just always done it. If that makes any sense. You can just do like this, href equals, and this little pound sign, and it goes nowhere. Matter of fact, let's save this right now, and we are going to open it in a browser so we can look and see what we've done so far. So back into the folder, the file we just created, open that up, and it looks like this. So we've got one thing on here. You can see that it, when I hover over it, it doesn't do anything, but the pointer changes like it's a hyperlink because it recognizes it's an anchor there. And I'm not sure this is going to do what I want it to. It should be all the way across the screen right now, and it's not. And I was having this problem as I was trying to work up to this lesson. So we will see what happens as we keep moving on. Let's put that back the way it was. Click equals info. We haven't created the info function yet, but we will. And again, we'll make a second list item. Anchor. So I've done this two different ways here. Like I showed you just a second ago, this will say, yeah. So this will, I should have two links now. One will take you to, if you do it this way, you type it href HTML, it should take you to that other page. And this runs a function. This just opens the next page. You can do it either way. One way is easy, one way's, no, they're both just as easy. So let's do that real quick and create a new file. And we're going to call that the interface. Chapter 3 interface. And what I'm going to do is copy and paste, because it's going to be about the same. Here, and let's do this. We'll change the title here so we know what page we're looking at. Let's go save all. Open that back up wherever it went. Or did I close it? Maybe I closed it. Open back up my info file. Now I have two buttons. If you see, oh, I didn't put a this class in here. Maybe I don't need to. I'm not sure. But you can see, so this is how we know, like, the JavaScript is working, but not completely. For some reason, this is displayed, this information is displayed as the class button here. Let me see if I can do this and this. And then zoom in for you. Okay, maybe you can read the code. I haven't zoomed in the whole video, and I apologize. Pause it here if you need to catch up. On the info page, you can see here that I gave this a class, but I did not give this anchor a class. And then as you look back over to the web page, the information is styled differently, and the interface is styled differently because it was not given a class. But the nav bar is not styled the way it's supposed to be. And it should look like this. I don't know. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And it's really starting to frustrate me. Maybe I missed a colon or something. Maybe I missed a period. Spelled something wrong. I don't know, but I've been fighting with this. And again, things change. So I don't know what's happened. I don't know why it's not doing correctly. In fact, where did that page go? If I go in here, view the page source, it's written the same way. Let's just keep it on, and we will see what happens. All right, so back to the code. In the project, it's just some. So first off, I like to do this. And this just a comment here that tells me that this end div is for the nav bar. So I know where it starts and where it ends. You may think that's redundant or remedial or whatever you want to call it, but I can tell you as you start creating lots of boxes, you're going to forget which one's which, put stuff in the wrong place, and it gets frustrating. So if you just simply comment where the end is, you can start the rest of your content. And in this case, that's exactly what we're going to create next is content. Data role, and it's going to be content. So all content is styled the same way. And I give this one an ID as well, so that I can, when I create my own CSS file later, if I want to style this particular content with the ID of content differently, then I can do that. And I know that, okay, on the first page, the info page, it's content or content 1. And then on the interface page, the second page, it'll be content 2. So I can style them differently if I ever feel that need. I may have done that in this project before, but I don't remember. So then we just need a few things in here. The H1 for our title. Fluid unit conversion. And a little paragraph. Do a little UL. I'm never sure if I spell leaders correctly. It's R-E or E-R. I don't know. This ain't a spelling class, so that's good for all of us, isn't it? Another paragraph. This is a break, and it just kind of separates lines. And paragraph. This is the end of the content. This is the end page. And then of course you got your body and all that good stuff. Okay, so this should be all we need for the info page. And it's just kind of, again, going over lists. We show you now anchors, classes, that kind of stuff. Save all. And we will refresh our web page, and we got this here. So it's pretty ugly, and the nav is not working. I cannot figure out for the life of me what is going on. So it's ugly, it's stuck to the left, and we discussed that earlier. If we want to make it prettier, we would do that wrapper, stick it in the middle, and do our CSS. So hell, that's what I'll do right now. I'm going to add a new file. I'll just call it chapter3.css. And make it a width of 960 and a margin of auto margin. And then we'll go back in here So this page, we could do the page. Yeah, let's just do that. ID equals wrapper, right? And that should do what we want to. So, did not work. Let's see. Make the background green so we can see what it's calling the wrapper here. Did I save all? I don't know if I saved all. Sorry, I'm trying to close up so you can see it. This is the CSS for the wrapper right here so far. And then let's look and see if it works when it does not do anything. This is so weird. Maybe because it has the data role page. Let's just see if I take that out, what happens. And we know this should work because we did it last week, right? Oh, well. And when you forget, okay. I do all kinds of stupid stuff all the time. So if you're doing it too, it makes me feel better. We got to link it, right? Otherwise, it doesn't see it and it has no idea it's even there. So that's why nothing's working. We start to forget the simple things. All right, now save all. Go back here, do that. Okay, now it's centered. Well, you know what I mean. It's got a little background. It's centered. I want these buttons to work, and I don't understand why they're not.
3 days later.
All right, after a while of being frustrated, I got it to finally work again. The nav working. There, I still haven't found the issue. So if you're looking at my code, your code, if it's not working for you, maybe it's working for you. I just copied and pasted from the working thing. It looks exactly the same to me, but there is some detail somewhere that isn't working. Or maybe if you just copy your stuff over to a new project, it'll work. But if you can see the code as far as I am here, where's my thing? This code gets it. And I got over on the side, I got my nav bar working like it's supposed to be. Well, not working, but looking like it's supposed to be. All right, so we've got this far. It's ugly. If you want to go ahead and create your own CSS file to style this differently, just go to the CSS folder. The CSS folder, right click, add new file, and then name it whatever you want for your CSS file. I named mine just chapter 3. You can remember the wrapper trick that we did in the last one. I set it to a width of 960, the margin auto, and the background to green, just so I can kind of see where it is. And I can, let's see if this works. Nothing seems to be working today. I give the page an ID of wrapper. And if I save it all and refresh, well, the page is now big. It's not auto margining for some reason. Maybe because of the jQuery data role page. Let's do this. This is where your little end things come in. We want it to cover the whole stuff, the whole page. So we'll put our little end div down here and make sure we label it. And see if this works. File, save all, refresh. That didn't work at all, did it? Let's not worry about that for now. It's one of those days. You don't want to wake up. So this is good enough. We've got our fluid conversion working. It ain't pretty, but I don't care at this point. It looks good. This is just the info page, and I've just given you the formula here that we're going to use in our JavaScript to make it work. So that's the first page. We're done with that one. You can close it or leave it open or whatever you want to do. We're going to go to the interface page. And right now the interface page looks the same because I copied and pasted all the code from the previous page just to save time, because we're only going to change a few things, right? So, oh yeah. This is the kind, I don't know if this is where we want to start doing the node or if we want to wait. Close that. This over here. Goodness gracious. All right, so we keep all the same, the CSS. Oh, let me do this again because I changed a few things. Control-Alt, Control-C, open your interface page. If you don't have one yet, and you probably don't, just go to the main folder, right-click, add new file, or create a new text file, however you're doing this if you're not using the IDE. And open the interface. If it's new and you don't have anything, it's a blank document. You're just going to copy and paste everything from the info page into the interface page. Super easy, because everything is going to be the same unto that, from the head, the body, the nav bar is going to be the same, except we're going to change this class here. We're going to remove it from this button. Is this right? No, something doesn't feel right. And then we're going to add it to this button. We can put it, we'll just put it after the href. Make sure you got your quotation marks. Make sure you got your quotation marks. Make sure you got your colons, your commas, and all that good stuff in the right place, all your dots. And then after the nav bar, we've still got, we can keep the same content. And then we're just going to change what's inside that content. So we can get rid of all of this stuff and give us some room and put all our stuff in here. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a label in here. We didn't talk about these, but like if you have a button and you put the button in there, you need a label for that button, and that will be like, it'll tell the user what that button is for. That's what a label is, and you'll use for a button or a text field or any of that kind of stuff. So this is going to be for, we'll call it gallon. And it's going to say enter the quantity in gallons. And then we're going to have an input type. This is going to be, we're going to do, this is going to be your slider. It could be a text field where somebody types into it, but this time we're going to do a slider. And that is input. The type is going to be range. And then we're going to call it, then we're going to name it gallon. So you may have been a little confused when we say label for gallon. This is the label for this input, and because it's named gallon, so it knows that's the label for gallon. We're also going to get it an ID of gallon. We will give it a minimum value of 0 and a max value of 100. Close it. So if we want to see what that looks like, we'll go save all. Do I have that still open? I do not know. So right now we can't just click over and view it because we need to set up our server. You can just go to your folder, wherever that is, and open your interface, and it should open up here, and now you can see it. So what we've done, we took this class, right? We took it off of the information button and we put it on the interface, because when you're on this screen, it kind of indicates, hey, this is where I'm at. I'm on the interface page. And the title, oh, I changed that. The title also lets you know that. Oh, you can't see my other thing. Hold on. So you got your titles up here. When you're on the fluid page, this is highlighted because on that page we have the class set on that button. But when you go over to the interface page, we want that to change. So we put that class on the interface button, and you can see in the titles which page you're on, whether it's the info page, the interface page. That's nice. Here's your label. Enter the quality in gallon, enter the quantity in gallons, and that's what we did right here. This label line, put this label on the page. And then this input type, range from 0 to 100, named gallon is this slider right here. It goes from 0 to 100. That's how you make a slider. Super cool. And you can see it's like glowy and all that. That's the jQuery making it all pretty for you. That's what jQuery does. It also has, it does a lot more than that, but that's neat. So when you click on it, click off it, it glows. So now we need to make it do, well, we need a place for the calculation to appear when we get to it. So we'll do a little break and put a table in here, I think. A little break, and then we'll put a button. So when you slide it to where you want it, and then you push the button, as you push the button, it will do that calculation. Let me zoom back in and slide up so you can see it. I'm gonna add a button with an on-click event, and that's we're gonna call it display. You put those semicolons in there to indicate that it's a function. Now we haven't gotten to the JavaScript yet. We're going to create a JavaScript that has these functions in it. So right now we have this function here, the on-click info function, and the display function. Those are two functions that we have to put in. And we will just have it show display on the button itself. That looks good. Put another break in here. Table. We'll give an ID of data if we want to. That way, if we want to style it, we know what to call it in our CSS. The first table row, table data. Okay, so what we've done here is there's a table. Let's save all. Zoom back out a little bit. So refresh, and you can see now that we have quantity entered and 0. This is our table. The first table data says quantity entered, and the second table says 0 because that's what we put in our code. What we're going to do in just a second is write the JavaScript that does this, and it will change this 0 when the displayed is entered. It will go in here, it'll find the ID quantity display, and it will change the HTML within that from 0 to whatever the answer is. After it does the calculation, it's going to throw it right in here. I hope this makes sense. I know some of you have not, this is the second time you've ever seen HTML. That's what we're going to do. This is trying to just explain it the best I can. Well, let's go ahead and move into the JavaScript. So we've got two functions. We could do three. So go to your JavaScript folder, add new file. It's going to be chapter 3 JavaScript. That's all I'm making it. You can name it whatever you want. So we're going to start actually doing JavaScript. So what is the first thing we want to do? Let's make it so that we can bounce back and forth. Right now, you see when I click these buttons, well, this one gives me an error. This one doesn't. That's weird. It doesn't do anything. So right now, okay, that's right. Maybe I need to explain this again. So remember, we did this two different ways. The first link on the info page, on both pages. Okay, so this is why we have to do two. So you can do, like I said earlier, you can do your links like this. There's nothing wrong with that. But since this is a JavaScript class, let's do them both as on-click events. And this is how we change from one page to the other. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with doing it the other way, but since we're getting into JavaScript and learning JavaScript, let's just do it that way. Why not? So we'll change both of these to on-click events. And we're going to hope they work. So one is info, one is interface, and the last function we need is display. So we'll go into our JavaScript, and this is how we do a function. F-U-N-C-T-O. We're going to tell it it's a function, and the first one's going to be info, right? The function info. We're declaring this function. Just make sure you get your names right, because it starts to get a little confusing. So the info function should take us to the info page. And to do that, all we have to do is simple window location. Window location is going to be equal to the name of the page. So the info page is, where is it? Chapter 3 info.html. And you always end each line or each command with a semicolon. So that's it. Change it to the info page. And now our next function is interface. Window, location, interface. Now, assuming I spelled everything correctly and I got the names right, it's always so hard for me to remember names of files, but they're right over here. That's another reason I love this IDE. They're right here, chapter 3 info and interface. So these two functions are written. We're going to save all, and we're still going to get that error, right? Oh, did I change it on the interface? Yeah. All right, so we're still getting that error. What we need to do, remember we installed Node.js. And I gave you all the files that you should need. So there should not be, I'm hoping that there isn't any setup that needs to be done. If you run into a problem, send me an email or go watch chapter 8. Maybe you can figure that out. I don't know. That's going to be tough. But what we need to do is we have our, should I close this up or should I move back? We have our folder and all the stuff in here. You got to know where this location is. I need you to open a command line. If you've never done that before, go down to your little search bar on a Windows or open a terminal on a Mac. And on Mac, you'll use terminal, but in Windows, you go to search bar, you type CMD. And the first thing that comes up is going to be the command prompt. Just click on that and it'll open a window. Looks like this. It's the command line, a command prompt. So we have to navigate into the folder where all our stuff is. Mine, I kept on the desktop. So I would do CD, which is for change directory, desktop. Make sure the D is capital because that's how Windows sees it. And what is my folder name? ch3 underscore fluid converter. So I'm doing CD for change directory into this folder. And if I hit enter, you can now see that the command prompt is in the user's desktop chapter 3 fluid converter. That's where I'm at. Once you're here and you have all the files in the right place that I gave you, all you should have to do is type node server.js. So this is saying use the node program that we downloaded and installed to run that server JavaScript that I gave you earlier. And that server JavaScript, if you look at it, it gives us some variables. We're using express and body parser. This console log function just writes it to the console saying, hey, it's starting the server. And it creates the server, tells it where to look for these files. And this will get us over the limitations that the browsers have been putting on us. So if you are in your command line, is this the right one? Yeah, okay. You're in your command line. I got a couple of them in here. Node server.js, hit enter and nothing happens. I wasn't in there. Thank you. Goodness gracious. Maybe it just took a few times I had to click the button. I don't know. But if you see starting server.js and then server.js is ready for requests, you know that it's working properly. And then you can go, let's see if, I hope this works. And you see what I'm seeing. Then you can go, instead of just looking at the files, here, you're going to hit 127.0.0.1. This is called a loopback IP address. And if you've taken other computer courses, maybe you've heard of it before, but this simply points back at the machine that you're using. We're then going to tell it what port we're going to use. 8080 is the port we're using. And then we need to tell it the name of the file. Now, most websites, most everything, the main file, the landing page, is always called index.html. And that is just kind of the way it's always been. I don't know if I'm a fan of that or not. I like to label my files exactly the way, so I'll remember what they are. But anyway, so if you have an index.html, the IP and that port number will be fine and it'll work. If you don't have an index.html, like my landing page for this project is the chapter 3 info.html page. So I have to type this extra thing in there. But when I do, oh, thank goodness it worked, yay. You can see that the things change. We're no longer looking at the file, it's looking through that server. And it should, when I click this interface button, fire off the interface function that we just wrote in our JavaScript and take us over to the interface page. You know why I didn't? I know why I didn't. Because I have not linked my JavaScript just yet. Let me move this back over here. And this is something I do quite frequently. You probably will too, I don't know. But remember, we have to link everything. So on the info page, we don't have that JavaScript linked yet. I got to put that in here. It doesn't know to look for that function that we just created. And it's frustrating when you keep making the same mistakes over and over. But so chapter 3.js. Okay, put that line in there and then also copy this line and put it in your interface JavaScripts as well. So now we've linked it. Let's save them all. I'll do that too. I'll forget to save it and wonder why it's not working. And then if we go back and look at our thing, it should. Why are these not working? Okay, so I can't find the interface, but the JavaScript work. So it should .html. Yeah, it's there. Did I not put that in? Yeah, okay. So I forgot in my code. It couldn't find it for a second because in my code I forgot to put .html. Remember, you have to specify the file type. Now it's a silly mistake. Again, save all. Go back, look at our pages, and now you can bounce back and forth. The JavaScript is firing off, you know, from the client to the server, our fake server, where the JavaScript is running on the server. So remember, we're doing client and server-side programming at this point. This is, if you've heard the term full stack developer, this is what we're learning, and not just front end, which is, you know, HTML and CSS. We're learning back end stuff too. In this case, JavaScript, PHP, SQL, and we're going to cover a couple other things too. So buckle up. Anyway, that's where we're at. We got the interface working. The slider works. Yay. When we hit display, it doesn't do anything because it's not written that function yet. So let's jump back into the JavaScript file and we'll write this last function to finish up this project. And this video is going to be really long. I apologize, folks. And what did we say we were going to call it? I don't remember. Look back over here in on the interface page, and we said we were going to call it display. So function display. And I'm not slowing down to identify all of the syntax in here. It's very similar for many programming languages, and I know too many of them, so I get them confused. But when you do this, you're saying, hey, this is going to be a function. We're going to call it display. We're going to put these parentheses on here, and this is where you would later put arguments in if you need to add something to that function. We're not there yet. Don't worry about that. The open and close brackets, little squiggly lines, I forget what you call them. This is where your function should reside, in between. And make sure your whole function is in there, because if it's trying to get something that is outside of these two lines, it's what we call out of scope, and it won't see it, won't know what to do. So just make sure your whole function resides in there for each function. The next thing we're going to do is declare a variable. A variable is can be anything. A variable in this case is going to be whatever this number is in the slider. That's going to be our variable. So the variable could be 50, it could be 20, it could be 69, which is why we call it variable. It could be any one of these numbers. And how we declare a variable is say var, and then we'll give it a name, call it gallon. And in order to get the information from the HTML page, there are a few things that we have to do. We have to reference the document. So this is saying the document that's calling this function. We're going to go to that document. We're going to get the element by ID. And remember, on that page, we gave the element so we've got two. We've got name, ID gallon, and we've got an ID quantity display, which we'll use later. So right now we're going to get from the ID gallon the value. Oh my goodness. So we're declaring a variable. We're calling the variable gallon, but it doesn't matter what you name it. Names are just for you. Names help you remember what it is. It's going to go to the document and get the element with the ID of gallon. and it's going to look at it and say, what's that value? So is it 50? Is it 20? Is it whatever? And it's going to take that. It's going to take that 50 or 20 or whatever and store it in memory as a variable. And we can reference that variable by calling gallon or using gallon because that's the name we gave it. I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't, let me know. So once we get that value, we got to do something too. We got to put it into that formula. Get element by ID. I'm doing this right. Me and names do not get along. The older I get, the worse it gets. All right, so what we're going to do with that number, we're going to go through a formula, but first we want, it's kind of backwards the way we're telling it. We're going to do something with that variable, that gallon variable. When we're done with that, we're going to put the result of whatever calculation we're doing into the quantity display element on this document in the HTML, the inner HTML. And remember, that is right now it's a 0 because this is what's considered the inner HTML. Hold on, let me zoom this in. This is what's considered the inner HTML. That's 0 right there. Anything with inside those tags, the TDs. So, and I'll slow down for a second. We're going to go to the document. We're going to get the element with the ID of quantity display, and we're going to change the inner HTML. We're going to change it to the gallon variable plus some text. Let's I'll come back and do this just so I'm not too confusing. 3.789, right? So we're going to take that gallon variable, divide it by 3.789, and we're going to put it in that inner HTML, right? Let's save this, see if it works. Refresh. Put whatever number on here. Let's go to 20 because I said 20 earlier. Back out. Here we go. 20. When I click display, should fire off that display function, and it'll take the 20, divide it by 3.789, and put the result right here. Let's see if it works.
Two very boring minutes later.
I called it gallons and not gallon. If I get rid of the S, file, save all, and refresh, go to 20. All right, it's still ain't working.
Approximately 10 hours later.
Figured it out. If you look here, I spelled on-click wrong, so it didn't work. You probably are going to have a lot of problems like this. The insert key is not pressed. On-click. Sometimes when you're running these problems, it's just defeating. And then you find it's something that simple. It's so... Oof. Anyway, save all. Refresh. We're on the web server page. Slide it to 20. Click display, and it worked. Oh, I changed it. Dang it. All my troubleshooting, I simply changed the formula here. Let me put it back the way it was so there's no confusion. This function was at the end. Our gallon. Hope I don't spell something wrong. Document. DOCUME. Gallon. And we're going to get the value. And then we're going to take that and we are going to do the formula. I don't know if that needs to be there or not. Let's leave that off for a second, see what happens. File, save all, refresh, put 20 on the clock. Hit display. Okay, we got the quantity entered is this many liters. So that's great. We got the calculation done. Oop, you can't see it. Refresh, put 20 on the clock. Hit display and it shows up. Finally, got it working. But this looks messy and gross and I don't like it. So what I'm going to do is a few different things. When you want to specify, I'm going to put the I want to make it a phrase says like 20 gallons is this many liters. And to do that, you got to concatenate a few things together. What we're going to do, why is this doing that? We're going to say, we're going to take the gallon, unaltered gallon, variable. We're going to put that in there and then we're going to say this many gallons. So you have the variable, the number, and then you're going to add the text gallons next to it. Now you put text in double quotes, single quotes, whatever, and make sure you leave a space. Otherwise, there will be no space between the number and the word, and it'll be all mushed together. And we want to put equal signs either here, space, and then plus. I'm just going to put this in parentheses so it does the calculation right. And then we want, instead of having all of these digits out here, we want to put it out, just round it to the 2 digits. And sorry, I'll zoom in here and slide over just a little bit. Gallons to fixed is how you do that. And we want to specify just 2 digits. There, and then plus liters, space liters, put a period in there. So it's going to read 20 gallons equals whatever the math shows out to 2 decimal points and the word liters. So let's save this, save all, refresh, put a number up there, hit display. Now you've got the variable 42 gallons, which is our text, is 11.8 liters because this formula here ends up with 11.8, and then we got the text liters in here. So that's how you make it look nice and neat. And I've just done the whole project. I have had multiple problems throughout this. You probably will too. If you do, send me an email and I will do my best to work with you. Ask some questions, read a book, Google it, something. Don't turn in garbage, because I've sat here and fought through this. You're going to have to do the same thing. It only gets harder, folks, and I've already done these assignments several times over the years, so if I'm having this many problems, you probably will too. Like I said, ask questions. We can do tutoring or whatever. Send me your code and I'll tell you where the problems are, or I'll do my best to figure it out. Obviously, I'm not great at spell checking, so you might be on your own there. But if you have any questions, send me an email. So thanks, and I'll see you next week.